Today we are joined by Matthew Faraci, the founder of the Inspire Buzz public relations PR firm. And on today's show, he shares why people want to align with brands that align with them, what public relations actually is, how effective public relations can actually help to grow your business, why he believes that public relations is a lot like surfing, how public relations can help improve your brand, and why his business was created to make good popular. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever wanted to know about public relations and its potential impact on your business's bottom line, then this is the show for you.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top. Teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the CNC up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, in a world where most people will do anything for the almighty dollar, today's guest makes me want to holler because he is what I would describe as the real definition of a baller. Today's guest, Matthew Faraci, he actually wants to make good popular. Matthew Faraci, welcome onto the Thrive Time Show. How in the heck are you doing, my friend?
Well, now I'm fantastic because I'm here. So how could I complain?
Can you explain to the listeners, because many of our listeners are going to go to inspire.buzz.com right now, or it's just actually just inspire.buzz.
It's Inspire.buzz. It's actually a new kind of extension. .buzz, believe it or not, is an extension.
And when you go to inspire.buzz, if you're going there right now, you're going to see a website that is a laser show of how would you describe this? How would you describe what we're looking at here?
I describe it, Clay, as if Monty Python went into the web design business.
That is fair. That is a fair assessment.
Yeah. How does that sound? Look, when I designed it, usually, you don't actually, people say, oh, check out my website. But these days, you don't really check out websites except to get basic information. Although I should say your website is awesome, by the way. Love the big epic picture when you get on there. But most websites, you're just going there to look for info, not to have an experience. And I just thought, you know what? Look, I'm going to make it as wacky and crazy as possible. I'm going to push the designer to the limits. And if people don't like it, then they're not the right people for me to work with. And if they like it, then they are. So it's like, it sorts itself out. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense because I think in a lot of ways you and I are very similar at the core.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think we're on the same frequency. So you are an innovator in the world of public relations, and you're the founder of Inspire Buzz. It's a marketing and media strategy agency that exists to make good popular. Could you break down what that means and also explain what public relations even is?
Yeah. Okay. That's great. So first of all, I really mean that we live in a society today that unfortunately all too often, especially our media and social media culture, all too often advocates vice over virtue. Right. And so I started to think, what really started me was many years ago, I heard a guy give a talk. And he talked about how politics was downstream from culture. And at the time I was in politics, we'll get into that. And when he said that, that thought arrested me because I thought, well, how are we ever going to fix our politics if our culture is broken? And so at that moment, I just decided I wanted to be part of the solution. And so that's kind of what got me started on this crazy trade. So we literally work with brands, technology, entertainment projects, other people who are, and it sounds trite almost, but they are doing good things and they are trying to make the world a better place because that's my passion. And you can't be passionate about money You have to be passionate about what you do, and then the money comes in behind it, right? The money comes in to support it. Your second question, Clay, was, I'm trying to remember your second question.
I'm sorry to do 2-part questions. I'm a horrible host. And as a horrible host, one of the things you do as a horrible host is you want to paint your guests into a corner by asking them multiple part questions. And I apologize. I just was thinking just kind of out loud, a lot of people don't know what PR means. They don't know what the P stands for. They don't know what the R stands for. They don't know what public relations is all about. What does public relations do? What do you do?
Well, so I use the term PR only because that's what people use, but I personally hate it. I prefer the term, relationship marketing. I've been throwing out some other terms there, but this is one thing. But traditionally, what it means is it was birthed at a time. Think about the word social media. Before there was social media, there was just media. So if you wanted to get your message out to the world, the media was your only way to do it. Now you have multiple. We're on one right now, right? But I'll give you a very specific example. If you think of somebody like Denzel Washington, who is incredibly well known, but he's very much a creature of sort of that other era of using the media to get out his message. Right. These days, you need to do both. So in his case, he's very strong in the former and probably not as strong on the social media game, right? And then you have influencers and creators, a lot of them whom I know, they're really strong on their social game, but they still need the credibility of being covered by the media, if you will, we could call it the traditional media. But again, these terms, they get all messy because the traditional media is not really traditional, but that's a whole other conversation. But you use this stuff to get your message out to the world. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Can we, I want to go a little off-roading here with you just for a second. Some off-roading.
I love it. Let's go.
You've worked with some big clients, and I know you're not going to sit there name drop and brag unless I kind of prompt you to do it. And I brought 2 guests on the show here. Corey Minter is the founder of Trinity Employment. It's a staffing company for professionals, medical, like hospitals. If you need a professional, that's who you're going to go to, Trinity Employment. And then we have Josh with Living Water Irrigation. These are both Christian business owners. And I want to ask you a couple questions, and I know they have questions for you as well. But what are some of the big clients that you have worked with? Maybe the names that some of our listeners would know.
Well, I'll give you my my favorite example. I've worked with a streaming company called out of Utah called VidAngel, and VidAngel came up with a fantastic idea, which had actually had several iterations before them. In other words, other companies had tried, and I can tell you the whole story. But basically, what they allow parents to do, is to take content, say Game of Thrones. I'll give you an extreme example, and you can go through and actually filter the various things that you don't want your kids to see. The better example are pieces of content where, excuse me, Clay, where there's certain content where, and I'm trying to think of a good, I know, The Martian was a great example with Matt Damon. It's one of those movies where I almost would let my kids watch it, but it's just a couple things, some language, some nudity, some other things where I couldn't let them watch it. And so VidAngel created the technology to allow you to remove and filter the things that you as a parent object to. So again, they fit that sort of rubric of they're making the world a better place by making more content family friendly, right? So they're a wonderful example of the kind of client that we love to work with.
And then what kinds of work would you do for that kind of client? I mean, to get them more exposure, what would you do?
Well, okay, so every single client that I work with, and this is one of the things, Clay, that is very important, I think, for your 2 guests to understand. I was trained in political strategy, so that's where I came out of, and that's not that dissimilar from the training that I had over the years from some incredible mentors to what people learn in the military. And the idea is that you really, and so if you don't come from this, this background, it's very hard to see PR this way. Even I found people that have business training doesn't train you for this. So I've often met people in a business setting who are PR people for companies, and they've never had this training. And so for them, they go, wow, this is amazing. But the idea is to create a strategy. So you look at, where am I right now? Where is the narrative right now in the public space? Where is it going? Where do I want it to go? And how do I get there? Right. So these are some very key questions. And then you create a very, very comprehensive strategy to do that. And then you discipline yourself over and over and over and over again every day to work towards that. I usually do this in 90-day increments because I believe that you can't really think beyond 90 days effectively. So any person that's listening that would be like, from a political background, they would just say, oh yeah, this stuff's obvious. Because if you look, candidates, right, you've even heard this term used on Fox News and CNN and other places. Candidates are always you hear this term about them being on message, right? It's very important for them to be on message. So they're familiar with this discipline, and that's what you see in the political space, is that really, really successful candidates are extremely disciplined. And so it's operating on strategy, and it's having the patience to see that strategy through. So a lot of people, they want to be famous in the next 15 minutes. And that's the problem with 15 minutes of fame, is that's all you get. And then you go away. Our goal is to create long-term, what I call ubiquity, so that you are the go-to person on, you mentioned one client does irrigation, right? So
Yep.
Off the bat, I would say, okay, my goal for you is, we want you to own that conversation completely. And that's the goal. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot. It makes a lot of sense, and I want to go a little deeper as well, if you let me. Because I want to talk about Mitt Romney. I want to stay on brand. I want to talk about
Okay.
Mitt Romney. I love Mitt Romney. I
Yes.
love people who have strong values. And if Mitt Romney was looking for a job, I would hire Mitt Romney, because I love hiring Mormons. I love hiring Mormons. I've never had a Mormon ever call in late to work, ever. Not 1 minute late, ever. And I've had dozens of them work for me. Never had a sick day either. They don't drink caffeine as a general rule if they're practicing. They don't have a lot of extramarital issues going on. It's just great. It's a great thing. Can you tell us about working with Mitt Romney's political campaign? And if you can't, I get it. Or maybe just tell us about some of the political work you've done.
Well, I just wanted to say I also share your opinion of people in the LDS community.
Yeah.
I think that they get a bad rap sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're excellent people. I mean, I think that's the word I would use, is that common thread of excellence, honesty, integrity. One of the few times where you can actually have a handshake deal and people will do what they say they will do. And so I feel the same way you did. My role was not strictly. Actually, I would like to tell your listeners a story about Mitt Romney that speaks to his character.
Yeah.
If you would. So one day I'm at work. I was working at a place called the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, which is a wonderful organization that's still around, and their goal is to keep the U.S. competitive versus other countries in the world from a business standpoint. In fact, Clay, I think a future interview for you. And I saw the phone ring, and it said Ann Romney, and I don't know why I just didn't connect. I pick up the phone and I hear, "Hi, Matt, it's Mitt Romney." And I thought it was I thought it was a prank, right? So I don't know it. He caught me in the wrong part of the day. So I said, "Hello, Governor. How are you?" Just in the off chance that it was him, and it actually was him. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was looking for some research that we had done on some international competitiveness issues. And I spent a day or two going through this research with him. This was for his book that he was writing, No Apology. And, that was kind of it. Got him the piece of data he needed. And I saw him a little bit later, and he was extremely thankful and gracious and everything you would expect Mitt Romney to be. And, that's the end of it. That's all I thought. So I get a call from the New York Times a couple months later, because I believe when he called, he was running for president, but he wasn't the candidate, right? It was still during the primaries.
Yeah.
And I get a call from the New York Times, and they want to know what it's like to work with Mitt Romney. And I said, well, what exactly are you referring to, and how did you get my name? And they said, well, he credited you in his book. And I said, wait, what? So I looked in the back of the book, because he hadn't sent me a copy. And just for helping him for 2 days, he'd credited me in the back of his book. And what that speaks to is the character of Mitt Romney, the fact that he cared enough, with somebody that he just worked for 2 days on his book, to make a little note in the back and say, hey, I want to acknowledge this person. To me, that spoke volumes to his character.
Now, I want to get into the weeds and the details. Let's work off the assumption. Can I tell you a true story that you and very few other people know? Are you prepared
to hear? Go.
Breaking news.
Go.
Recently, I signed an agreement to be represented by Foundry Media. And if you're in front of a computer, you can look them up, Foundry Media. And they represent Elon Musk's book that he did with Ashley Vance, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, Chris Kyle, American Sniper, Stan Lee's new stuff. And they're representing me on a book project that is called the Mastermind Manuscripts. So think like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich 2020, where we have the world's top branding expert, teaching branding. Let's say Michael Levine. The world's top restaurateur, Wolfgang Puck, teaching about how to run a restaurant. The world's top leadership expert, John Maxwell, teaching leadership. So I've got all these people in a book now. This is a true story. They're all in the book. I've got releases from them all. So it's all going to be coming out here soon. If I were to hire you to help me do public relations, what does that look like? Like, what does it cost? What are the steps? Talk to me about this, because I like what you do.
So one of the things that I'm going to use some boring words, and I'm going to I'm thinking of that famous scene from Robin Hood Men in Tights where the sheriff of Rottingham tells King Richard, the bad news in a good way. And he laughs and he says, Robin's trying to kill you. I'm going to use some very boring words and trying to make them sound exciting.
Got it. Yeah.
So you're right. So one thing that's very important is process. And I think anybody that's talking to an agency, they should ask about process. Why? Because the question is this: you can have all the great ideas all day long. And let me tell you, we have some great, incredible creative ideas that we've had, not because of us, but because a thing called divine providence exists. And that's what we believe. But there's the idea, and then there's the execution. Okay. So at a very basic level, what I would do is we would do a very deep dive into your book, into you, into everything, and just make sure that we know everything that there is to know. That's number one. Then number two, we'd come to you with a strategic recommendation. We'd say, based on your book, based on what we see in the marketplace, and let me pause on the marketplace thing for a second. Good PR is like surfing. And this is like all you got to remember. You're looking out there at the waves, and you're trying to see which wave you can get on and ride home. Okay, so sometimes you are the wave, and that's when you really know that you have become successful, right? Is when you are the story. That's down the line when you become so big. You mentioned Elon Musk, right? If Elon Musk eats a Snickers bar, now that's a story. But Elon Musk had to claw his way up there to become the story. So what you're looking for is other stories that so for example, one meta narrative that's taking place right now, as you know, in the corporate culture, Wall Street Journal led off the year with this story, was the lack of trust, right? Facebook, Boeing, Volkswagen, we could go on forever. The polling research shows that people have less trust in corporate America and frankly in other institutions than they almost ever have. So you look at that and you say, well, is that a place where leadership can come into the conversation, where you talk about how can you use proper leadership to restore trust? So I'm just shooting as an example.
Got it.
But what you're trying to do is say, Clay, you fit into this larger narrative we think you fit into this larger narrative. And so we're gonna go for that angle. And this is kind of our thrust. Okay, so then you come up with the strategy, you guys approve it, it's collaborative, and then the final phase is we go out, and one of the things that happens when you're testing, let's say, a pitch, which you're it's almost like sales, except instead of selling a product, you're selling a person and a story, is then you go out there and you find out how is the media reacting to what you're saying. I've gotten to the point after doing this for so long that typically my instincts are usually almost mostly correct, but still I have to tweak and pivot and go, okay, maybe that wasn't quite right. Maybe we got to adjust this a little bit.
Who
to the
are
left,
you pitching
a little bit
to?
to the right.
Who do you pitch to? Are you pitching to journalists, reporters? Is it fast pitch, slow pitch? How are you pitching?
Okay, so again, this is why in my little booklet that you can download on our website, I talk about the new way to succeed is the old way to succeed. Is that the idea is we look at PR as anybody with an audience. So this could be an established reporter like the Wall Street Journal.
Yep.
This could be a mom influencer who has a really big audience around homeschooling or some other topic that she's very important with. And what we really work hard to do, and Gary Vee talks about this a lot, but I so believe in this, is to provide value. So it's not just, hey, look at me, we're cool, cover our story. It's to really build relationships with people.
Yep.
Get to know what their priorities are, understand what value looks like to them.
Got it.
And provide value. So just as an example, I have a number of folks that I work with that I call with no agenda. It's just to say, how you doing? What's going on? Why? Because I want to know them. I want to know their kids. I want to know what they're really about as people, because I happen to like people. And it's a people kind of an industry. And so it takes that innate sense of knowing and understanding and really celebrating and appreciating people. And when you do that, you can figure out where the value comes from on both ends and come up with something that works. And I say that, Clay, because in the modern environment where you have, again, everything from the Wall Street Journal to somebody with a big Instagram channel, you have to really understand how to be nimble to understand these different influencers, if you will, call them influencer channels,
yep,
and how to collaborate with them.
I 100% agree. And for anybody out there who's not experienced public relations or worked with it, I want to give you some Google searches you can do to prove that I have messed with this and I know what I'm talking about, or that. So if you would Google search, everybody, Google search Clay Clark, that's my name, ClayClark, and the phrase Tulsa World, that's our local major newspaper, or Clay Clark Canbar, Kanbar. Maurice Canbar is the inventor of Sky Vodka, who bought 1/3 of downtown Tulsa, who hired me to help him market his unleased real estate, his unleased commercial real estate. When you Google search that, or you can Google search Tulsa man buys 8 billboards to profess love for his wife. Tulsa man buys 8 billboards. There you can see the story about another guest we have on today's show, Josh with Living Water Irrigation. And Josh
look, if that was Josh, I would just like to get off the show right now because he's making us all look bad. Okay,
so
how am I supposed to go back to my wife and respond to the man that bought 8 billboards?
So I guess you saw the story then, Matthew.
How do you compete with that? How does somebody compete with that? You're embarrassing us.
Well, I think it turned out really well for me, and hopefully it encouraged it hopefully encouraged a message of positivity for others out there as well. I think it was a great idea that Clay came up with. We were able to execute, and it obviously did a great PR thing for us.
But you were featured on the Kelly Clarkson show.
Yes, sir.
That's a mega point.
Yep.
You were featured on
Good Morning America.
Good Morning America. Mega point. You were featured on
Washington Post.
People Magazine.
Yeah.
It was Channel
8.
Channel 8 Tulsa.
Yeah. Fox News.
Fox 23 Tulsa.
The Thrive Time Show.
The Thrive Time Show. This just did the most humble show in America. So you've had some success with that.
Yes, sir.
So now you're familiar with PR.
Yes, sir.
And then Corey Mentor, if you Google search Corey Mentor, M-I-N-T-E-R, Corey, C-O-R-Y, Mentor, M-I-N-T-E-R, Corey Mentor, Tulsa. What you're going to find is that Corey has been featured on Channel 8? You've been in Fox, I believe, 23. Corey, where all have you been featured?
I write for the Tulsa World.
Okay.
On occasion, so I
So you all of us are familiar with this conversation.
Yeah,
So I'm going to start with you, Josh.
Yes.
What question would you have for Matthew? And then I'm going to let Corey ask a question there.
Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time with us. First of all, I love your message, Make Good Popular. I absolutely love that. I guess for me personally, or to be kind of selfish here, so you mentioned earlier about kind of controlling the conversation as far as irrigation is concerned, or for our other listeners out there, what's something on a local, actionable level that we could do to control that conversation?
Well, tell me which conversation you're talking about.
Well, I was just
can you give me an example?
Let's say he has Tulsa. It's called Living Water Irrigation. Okay.
Yep.
They do sprinkler systems. And I think what you're saying is you might want to be the go-to guy.
Sure.
And in a conversation related to sprinkler systems. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Is that where I'm
In our market, yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Matthew?
Yes, so there's two routes you can go. The conventional route, which I find boring, so I'm just going to say boring. And Clay, you should play some sound effect like wah, wah, wah.
I've got that for you.
Okay,
Nice.
thank you. But what I'm always asking is, but what can you do to have an authentic, heartfelt conversation with people about what you do? And the other thing I would say is becoming an expert or an authority on a particular topic. And that topic, like in the case of irrigation, right? Or you said sprinkler systems, I'm sorry. And the topic, okay, is connected to ultimately what you do. So let's say, for example, that there's a national story about water shortages. And this, remember here in California, that was a thing some time ago. So again, I'm just riffing here, okay? So
yeah, that's great.
Often we need to be more thoughtful about this, but just to shoot from the hip here, I'd say, okay, so why don't we slowly position you as an expert because of your irrigation or your sprinkler? Sorry, keep going irrigation. Because of the sprinkler expertise, you understand these different topics about water more than other people do. Just like because of Ryan's expertise, growing up in a family where he had to have professional security, he instinctively understood these security issues, right? Then we get you into news stories that are about these other topics, like let's say the drought that's taking place, and then people see you. So let me give you a real tangible example of this that happened to me, which is you guys are familiar with the company Warby Parker?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay. So a friend of mine told me, oh, you should check them out. Another friend of mine told me, oh, you should check them out. I went to their store on Sunset Boulevard. I walked in, I didn't do anything. Then I read an article in Forbes, and they talked about how Warby Parker was basically transforming the eyeglass industry. They were kind of like the Apple computer of the eyeglass industry.
Yep.
And they talked about all these innovative things that they were doing in the vision space, which I'm very interested in. And so even though I knew that a really great PR person had placed that story, I was like, yeah. I was like, that's so cool. And I ordered some glasses just because I was inspired by the fact that they're more than just an eyeglass company. They're an innovator, and they're telling that story, right? And so that's what you want to do is you want to find a way to take what looks like a boring topic and make it interesting and share with people your personal passions that they'll connect with.
So let me ask you this here. If I know Corey Mentor has some questions for you, so I'm going to go to Corey in just a second with trinityemployment.com. But my question for you would be this, and I know our listeners are asking, what does it cost? What? Because here's the deal. I'm just throwing it out there. Matthew, you just throw it back. I'll throw it out. You throw it back. I hired a PR firm back in the day, and they were good. Oh, they're expensive, right? Expensive, good. I was early. I was probably 20 years old, and I hired a company, and I got a few good wins. I got featured in the Tulsa World. Paid about $8,000 for that somehow to shape the narrative. But I got Boeing. I booked Boeing Airlines for their holiday party from that deal.
Wow.
I booked Quick Trip convenience stores. I got Warren Caterpillar. So I probably brought in $4,000, probably spent $8,000. And then that led to other events and that kind of thing. And then I hired another firm when I was 25. And they were expensive. I mean, they were really expensive. They were very expensive. So it's like a restaurant where you don't ask the price kind of thing. But they were like that with PR, where you mentioned the price.
If you have to ask, Mr. Clay, we're sorry, but you're not for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And every time I would ask, I would get this like, well, it's different because we're shaping the narrative and we're working. And I didn't talk like that, but I felt they were talking like that. And anyway, and I got nothing. I got nothing. I mean, I didn't get a single hit, not a win. Nothing. It was bad. So the third time around, I hired myself, and I went out there and did certain things, and it worked. So, but I also see tremendous value in hiring a good firm. How much do you charge?
Well, Clay, first of all, you're a rare breed because I most often tell people, dear God, don't do your own PR. And part of that is just because there is but you're you. So Clay is in a different category. Mostly because there are these unspoken rules in this business about like you can't pitch yourself, but somebody else can pitch you.
True.
It's kind of a thing.
True.
I give some very specific advice to I want to be super specific about this for people.
Yeah.
Number one, just like a lawyer, like we actually operate on a model much like a Deloitte, where we're very transparent with our clients about this is what you gave us, and this is exactly what we did with our time, and these are the results. These are the people we talk to, so that if we're not successful, you see how hard we worked, although thank God we're always successful. And if we are successful, you see how hard we worked, but we believe in transparency, like here's who we talked to, here's who we pitched, here's the results. And we're always showing measurable, like here's exactly what we did, because transparency is what you should expect from an agency. Why? Because why not? Right? So if they tell you, hey, we're working on it, we'll get to it.
Hey, wait, real quick. I have rude host here. No PR firms, I mean this, very, very few PR firms, almost no PR firms do what you just said. They do not show who they're pitching to. They talk in circles. So I'll give you one mega point.
It drives me nuts.
I'll give you one. You have one mega point so far. Continue.
Yeah. So I think that's important. Now, the other thing is you don't want, I have a personal bias against the big guys because they're big, dumb, and slow. Okay. So they're very, I worked in DC, and some of the big firms in DC will charge you like tons of money just to create a press release or just to do very little things. Now, if you're a big Fortune 500 company, and which is a lot of their clients, you probably don't care about those kinds of budgets. But if you're an entrepreneur or a startup, you care very much about those kind of budgets, right? So I always tell people you're better off to work with a boutique firm that has a specific niche, and that's what they do. So like we said, we're gonna specialize in this very specific vertical that we're in. And when other people come along and say, hey, you guys are good, I'm like, let me refer you out to somebody else that does that, because that's not what I want to do. Like, that's not my focus, and that's not where I want us to be.
Your focus is helping brands that make good popular, right? You focus on clean, right of center, morally solid, constitutional, kind of biblical based companies. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, we want people that are going out there and trying to, like we work with, you spoke to them the other day, Clay, Harmon Brothers, right?
Yep.
What do? They do all these super popular ads, but the thing that nobody notices is they're all clean and family friendly. So we're like, hey, you guys are awesome because you're making the culture better, not worse, right?
Right.
So anyway, the point is that you want people that have a specific vertical that is your vertical, and they're specialized in your vertical. So that's also super, super important. And then the other thing, and this is the final thing, is look, if some firm is not willing to agree to some goals and metrics and measurables, when I send a proposal to somebody, on the first page we say, this is what this is about, and these are the specific goals that we have. Do you agree with these goals? Because if you don't agree with these goals, we need to change them. And once we come up to a place where we agree with these goals, I want you to hold us accountable and ask me in 90 days, did we deliver on the things that we told you we would do. And so what I'm trying to educate everybody here is just these are the things you need to look for when working with an agency, and that should give you, those are the signs. If they look at any of those things that I just shot you and they sort of veer away from them, that's your warning sign to say, okay, this isn't the firm that I'm going to work with.
What kind of money ballpark are we talking about? $7? $70,000?
Well, I'm sorry. Thank you. You left out my last point, which
I'm
is,
so sorry.
though I don't like though I hate talking specifics with finances, here's what I would say to people. First of all, if somebody is too inexpensive, you probably don't want to work with them. So for example, if somebody says, for $5,000, I'm going to make you famous.
Total.
I'm sorry. I don't believe that.
But they'll get rich telling that to you.
If somebody tells you $25,000 a month or I walk, I'm like, okay, look, dude, again, depending on what you're doing, that could be possible, but you really got to be doing some world changing work to be at to be at that level. Right.
Okay.
So but you certainly don't want to hire somebody that says we're the cheapest or we're the most economical, because that's a red flag for me. Right. That's not going to work. And then again, a lot of the big firms, they charge a lot for what a boutique firm would charge much less to do. And in the boutique firm, you have actual people that really get in there and they specialize in their niche doing that kind of work. And so obviously that's us, but I mean, I've always had that bias with, come on, Clay, cross different verticals. I've always wanted to, whether it's a lawyer or whatever, I've always wanted to be able to pick up the phone and talk to the principal if I want,
Yeah.
I've never liked the bait and switch where I think I'm hiring Clay and then I get, Clay's college intern, and that's the person really doing all my work.
And that has happened to me
saying?
on two different PR firm occasions where you hire somebody and you get stuck to the underling with the underling. And actually, Dr. Zellner and I actually flew all the way out to Chicago to do an interview with a huge publication. And the lackey for the big PR firm, after we got there, said, "Oops, it looks like it wasn't confirmed. Do you guys want to have lunch while you're here?" And I was so pissed. I was so pissed. So I took my anger, I turned my bitterness, I turned it into betterness, and I bought my wife a very expensive salad. I almost killed us all while driving. Dr. Z took the wheel, said, "Can I drive, please?" Because I'm a terrible driver downtown Chicago. And that happened. True story.
Clay, I want to ask one more thing, too, that hasn't come up in this conversation that should. Have you ever been in a situation where you had, for lack of a better word, kind of a crisis PR situation?
A lot of my clients have had crisis PR situations. I have not, personally, but I think it's because people who don't share my worldviews get off of my podcast, because I say such motivational things like, if you don't share my worldview, get off my podcast. And so I think I don't have a whole lot of that because I quote Bible verses on the show and that kind of thing. But I could see where if I were like a Fox News, personality, I would have a crisis PR situation almost every day.
Yeah, so I ask because it's another thing that people need to think about. Again, coming from having done 35 political campaigns in my life, you gain both skills, both the outbound, getting the message out, and managing the incoming. How do we deal with this situation? But it's something else to think about, because as your profile raises, so do the haters. And so,
true.
You see this in social media. So the more famous you become, there's a positive, but there's nobody that becomes ubiquitous in their vertical, and nobody is a hater. In fact, I often tell clients, you don't matter until you have some haters.
True.
Right? Because until some people just say, "I hate Clay and I hate Clay's podcast,"
I get that.
You're not having an impact. And so it's it's something else to be thinking about in the back of your head, because it's very important, because just hoping you don't run into an incident or a legal thing that's not a plan. You have to plan for that with your PR agency and say, are you guys prepared? What are you guys going to do if we run into a problem? Are you prepared to handle that? Some of them may say, that's not what we do. We would refer you to our crisis partner, so-and-so. That's an honest answer, but it's a question that every business owner and organization needs to ask, because as you guys know, there's these crazy things that happen in the media and people get all ginned up. And, we had a client of ours that got involved in a very, a celebrity had, you guys probably remember this. I won't get into huge details, but had taken a picture of the president that was inappropriate. And we advised them right away, like, you need, I remember calling the CEO and saying, he had just gotten off a plane. I said, you need to get out there right now and make a very strong statement that says that this is not the civil discourse that you condone as a company. And to his great credit, he was very strong, very decisive, came out and said, this is not us. This is not our values. This is not what we stand for, regardless of political party, regardless of background. There's a certain level of respect that we require as a company. And they, to their great credit, people on the left and right came out and said, wow, you guys are great because you did the right thing. And the reason I credit that CEO is because he was willing to act decisively. I've worked with other people who weren't, and then they start getting hammered because the media is rightly asking, where are you on this? How come you're not responding? Isn't this a problem? Don't you object to this? Or if you don't object to this, tell us why not. And in our modern culture, that can happen within a number of hours. And so it's something people just need to think about.
Corey Minter, founder of TrinityEmployment.com, Trinity Employment Specialists, but the website is TrinityEmployment.com. Sir, what question would you have? What questions would you have for Matthew?
Yeah, hi Matthew. I have a quick question because there are so many different platforms and channels that you can put a lot of effort and energy into when it comes to PR. And I have a question for the average small business person. So when you're out looking at small businesses, are there certain things that you look at and you're like, I think it's really important that they would put efforts in this particular area, and it would be the most important use of their time. What are some ideas that you might have from some of our small business guys out here?
Yeah, one of the things for small business folks is, there's that, and I don't know who the heck said it, so forgive me, but there's that great brand statement about all great brands have two things, right? Proof of the claim of distinction and proof of performance, right? Mm-hmm. I was taught that by a friend of mine who's a brand expert, and so think about Nike, just do it, right? Yep. And so for a small business, start thinking about your brand, and this is something we get into too, because again, traditional PR is just telling your story. I work backwards. This is why we call it relationship marketing. And I look at, what is your story? How do you tell your story? Are you telling it the right way? Could we tweak this? Could we change that? Because we really need to see, do you have the pieces in place? There's a lot of people that contact us every day and say, hey, we'd love you to work with us. And I'll look at their stuff and go, look, you're not ready. Some basic stuff. You don't have a nice tight bio on your website. You don't have a place for the media to contact you. It's not very clear on all your social channels. Your branding is confusing. We go through a tune-up to say, do you have a coherent story across all platforms that makes it very easy when the media does come calling to see who you are, what you do, and what you're about. And so that's number one. And then as a small business, do you have a person on your team that can deliver the message effectively? And this is really big, okay?
Right.
When you're fighting in the beginning to get attention, which is what it is, it's a clawing, scrapping fight, right? When you're trying to, Clay, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you got to hustle for every opportunity.
Yep.
Right, Clay?
And by the way, I'm still there. That's how I operate. I love that scrappy honey badgerness. Back to you, sir. Yeah,
so when you're doing that hustle, okay, whoever your spokesperson is, they have to be willing to do that hustle. Right. They have to be willing to do those, annoying radio interviews at 5:45 a.m. drive time. They have to be, in other words, they have to be willing to hustle and do the work to get in there, and it's inconvenient. And I remember asking a YouTuber friend of mine, I said, so tell me about like when you work, what's the hours of a YouTuber? And he looks at me like I'm crazy. And he says, YouTube is not a job, it's a lifestyle, right? I'm always shooting videos, which is unfortunately why some YouTubers actually burn out. Right. But when you are trying to build your media profile, You guys would not believe some of the places I have done interviews, in bathrooms, in the backs of cars, walking around a parking lot, because if somebody, when I was working on different things or when I've had clients working on different things, when I tell them, hey, so-and-so called, Wall Street Journal called and they want to write a story on you, I tell them, you step out of that meeting, you stop what you're doing, and you make this the priority, because and I realize when you're running a business, you have to have other priorities. Okay. So I'm always going to argue, stop everything and spend all your time on PR. But just to be reasonable, it is one of those priorities where and this is a mistake I think a lot of small business owners make because they have so much on their plate. When somebody comes calling, right, and wants to do an interview, if you equivocate and you go, well, I don't know, well, maybe next week, I'm going on vacation, whatever. If you do that, they'll just go talk to somebody else and you've lost the opportunity. I once worked with a guy who was really, really fighting hard to be the authority on this particular issue. And we got him to the point where he was. Every time this thing happened, man, everybody was calling and and they were asking him for his opinion. And then he told me, I'm going to go away for a couple months and then we'll come back. And I said, oh, that's a mistake. Not because I need you to keep us working with you. I'm just telling you as professional advice, that's a mistake. Comes back a couple of months later, says, I'm ready to go again. I'm sorry. These two other people have now replaced you because all these media outlets called and asked for you. I didn't have you. So they went to somebody else and now they think you vanished. And so all the work that we've done to get your profile up to a certain place, we'd have to start from scratch.
I want to say this real quick. I want the listeners to know this. This is interesting. When Matt and I talked, Matthew, you can verify this. You said, how come I don't know you? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And this is interesting. Because my wife and I have achieved all of our financial goals, I am no longer willing to travel ever or to pick up the phone for anything urgent. That's just like the rules I have. So I'm like the reverse PR guy because I lived in that world for a while and I just don't want to do it anymore, at all.
But wait, Clay, Yeah. This is very important.
Yeah.
You did it to get where you are.
I did. That's what I want to share with everybody. I did it, but I'm done with it. But what you just said is 100% correct. I went to Bloomberg to do an interview. I was featured in the New York Times, an interview about Glenn Beck being parallel to Ludacris. I was in the Fast Company. I did all that, and I was willing to do it, but my wife and I very clearly knew where we were going. And so on this new book we're working on, the thing that is interesting is I'm willing to do podcasts because you and I today, Matt, we set a time. We committed to a time. You're on the show. I'm on the show. We're on the show together. This is great. And I can set a time. And I love that about podcasts. But the mainstream media, I probably will not make much appearances on because of that. But what you just said is 100%.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
And then you have to be ready to go. And they'll say, Josh, when you did the Kelly Clarkson show, they were nice to you.
Yes, sir.
But they wanted to do a call when they wanted to do the call, and it didn't really matter when you had to install the sprinklers.
Not at all. It was on their schedule.
And you've got to have your fact sheet ready to go. And let me tell you, one way to kill your credibility is to talk off the cuff without a fact sheet in front of you. Seriously. Because you get kind of nervous, Matt. You get kind of nervous. And so that's why having a good PR coach like Matt is so important. But I would encourage you, if you're out there, and you feel like you aren't standing out in a cluttered marketplace, this could be PR could be a big thing for you. And Michael Levine, my PR consultant back in the day, who's represented Michael Jackson's estate and Prince and Nike, he said that branding is analogous to gift wrapping. He said brand is just a perception. Or Elon Musk actually said brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead. Other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression that some have about a product. How would you describe branding there, Matthew?
Look, I totally agree with that. And I think it's interesting, too, because our culture is so perception driven now. Think about this. Facebook is a highlight reel of your life, right?
True.
It's one of the it's causing psychological problems, right? Because people look up their feed or Instagram and they're like, how come Josh's life is so great? He put 12 billboards up for his wife and my life is terrible, right?
Oh.
Because people don't put, up on their Instagram feed what a terrible day they had, right?
Right.
It's so you don't, right? So this just goes to show you that even every average person understands instinctively this idea of branding. It's kind of like when you're on a job interview, right? You're presenting the best version of yourself, right? But one of the things I think that the great brands do is they give you a feeling. It's like why I love Apple so much. And I know it's in vogue to say you like Apple, but I've loved Apple ever since I was a kid using the Apple IIc computers, because Steve Jobs sold me on this vision. And it even helps you to, you become such a brand fanatic that, like, I'm talking to you right now on my AirPods Pro, and guess what? I don't really like I love the sound, but I don't love the controls, right? But I'm such a fan of Apple that I'm willing to go, I don't really love this product, but
No, you can't
I'm
buy
willing to
anything
overlook
else.
it.
Don't buy anything else.
Huh?
You can't buy anything else because you feel like you're breaking the trust you have with this big company.
Right. So I think that the best brands really do make that emotional connection with you. And I think also in the marketplace today, and this is really important, there's all kinds of market research on this. And for both of you guys, we call it cause marketing, and I believe in this passionately. People want to align with a brand that aligns with them, right? And so why, if you look at Home Safe and Cove, why is that a good match? Because the people at Cove happen to say, hey, we think people of faith are good people, and we think that people in the faith community don't always get the recognition that they deserve for the good things they do of all different kinds of faiths, And so what does that do? So people in those different faith communities can say, hey, those guys like me. Those guys, I could know those guys. It's like they always say, you vote for the president who you'd most want to have a beer with, right? You vote for the candidate who you'd want to sit down with, because it's this idea, and this is why I think this is so important, guys. Relationships. In a culture where relationships can just exist digitally, I think people either want to experience real relationships, which is why live events like yours, Clay, are so popular, or if they can't have as much of that as they want to feel like the brands they're working with actually get it. So that's why we say make good popular, because guess what? If you're saying we do this, and this thing, we go, well, you're not, that's not a fit for us. So that's cool. Look what you're doing, go do it. But like we, even as a PR agency, have to feel an emotional connection to what you're doing. Why? Because when you're in the middle of a campaign and you're frustrated, the money isn't what matters. It's, I love Clay. I love what Clay stands for. I love what Clay believes in. And that's what motivates me to keep going.
What we're going to do now is we have time for 3 rapid-fire questions. I want to ask you about your tiny book that all the listeners can download for free. Josh, you have time for one fast. It's a quick question. It's a 30-second answer. It's like a bonus round. It's like the bonus fry. You've been to McDonald's. You've got that extra fry. You go, I did not expect this bonus fry. This is exciting. There's one bonus fry. Here we go. Let me cue up my bonus fry music. Let me get it restarted. Here we go. Let me get that thing. Okay. Let me get it. Oh, there it is. Perfect volume. I'm ready. Josh, what is your bonus fry question?
So when you're saying that relationships are everything, I believe that in our business and what it is. So what's a tangible way to get that personal connection that you would recommend from a PR basis as opposed to Facebook or Instagram or all the social networks?
Meet with the principal of the agency and see if you guys are resonant and compatible, and also ask them about their relationships. Hey, where are your relationships? That is everything.
Okay, awesome.
Corey Minner, hot and fresh.
It says, I've read a little bit about you, and it looks like you have a spiritual side, a faith-based side to who you are.
Uh-oh.
How do you incorporate that when you're dealing with business who are not faith-based? How are you alike to those around you?
Taking it to the bottom.
Well, this is why we talk about value. Like when we're working with content, we talk about values, because values are universal. Okay. And all values are inspired, okay, by like if you look at many different faith traditions, they have a commonality, and that there are very important virtues and values, okay, that are part of the fabric of what they are. And so we've worked with people that may not care about a particular faith tradition or the other. That's not really the issue. The issue is, are you trying to advocate for virtue over vice? And if you're pro virtue, we're pro you.
There it is. If you're pro virtue or pro you. My final question is, I know you have some free stuff for the listeners, and you've got a really cool tiny book, where it's animated, it's got facts in there, it's fun to flip through, it's somewhere between a booklet and a book. It's free. I think it's hilarious. I think it's jaw dropping.
I love how you call it a tiny book, Clay. I'm gonna use that word. That's
my
awesome.
tiny brain processes.
Like a tiny home.
Well, because it's not a free booklet. It's beyond a booklet. It's beyond. That's bad branding. It's beyond a booklet. This thing is. But it's not a book. It's a tiny book. So it's called How and Why the New Way to Succeed is in fact the Old Way to Succeed. What can we find in there if we download it, and where do we get it?
So if you go to inspire.buzz, first of all, please make sure there's a movie marquee at the top. Type your name up in the top of the movie marquee. If you don't do that, you don't really get the full Monty Python experience. Also, click all over the place, because there's something like 20 hidden items all over the website that you can try to find, and we did that just to mess with you.
Cool.
It's like an intelligence test, right? But the tiny book, I love tiny book. I'm going to use that. Clay, you're awesome. The tiny book just lays out this idea that a lot of these ideas that I'm talking to you guys about, and that's kind of like the real final big thing. If you talk to me, one of the things I loved about talking to Clay for the first time is Clay was fun, right? And there's if you're not, fun is again, it's like a cheap word and people overuse it. But let me go a little deeper. You really need to be enjoying yourself. Okay, so if you're working with a PR agency, you have to have fun with these guys, because here's the thing. They could be really good, but if you don't enjoy working with them, you're not going to do it long term. You're just not.
True.
Okay. And so it's got to be an experience. And that's why on our website, we try to create a fun experience, because what we're telling you is this is who we are. If fun is not a priority for you, go to somebody boring, because with us, you're going to get fun. And for some people, honestly, they're like, too many jokes, too much fun. That's not how we roll. We're all straight-laced and whatever. And that's fine for them. It's just, I can't help but be myself. I'm old enough to have realized that. And so if this is our personality, and so we show you that by saying, if you don't like that web experience, you won't like working with us. If you do, you're going to have a great time. And Clay, I felt like that's how you and I connected.
Absolutely.
I was like, aha, the light's on. This guy's fun. And from that flows so much.
Today's interview was a blasty blast and a laser show, and I appreciate you so much for being on the show. I feel like today's show was a bromantic. It was fantastic, and I was honored to have you on the show, and thank you so much in helping me get closer and closer to my quest to reach Mitt Romney. I'm just getting closer and closer to the fumes, to the aura, to the essence of Mitt Romney.
We'll have to send this. We'll be sure. We'll have to send this over to him.
Oh, Mitt.
So that he can, because he's got nothing else to do except work in the United States Senate. I'm ready for a
fast pitch from. I got the Mitt ready. I'm ready to catch Mitt here. He just throw it at me. I'm ready to go. And everybody check out inspire.buzz. That's inspire.buzz. One more time, because you got to remember inspire.buzz. Matthew, have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for investing your time with the Thrive Nation.
Clay, I look forward to your special edition episode of Dry Bar Comedy.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. All right, you take care.
Bye.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!
Hi, this is Jen from Body Central Physical Therapy in Tucson, Arizona. We've been using the Thrive 15 coaching platform since April of 2017 and have grown exponentially since that time. We've set up systems in the business that make my life much easier, allow me some time freedom, and we're also seeing the financial rewards of that. We went from owning 3 locations in 2016 to now we're up at 8 locations and still growing. The training that we're getting from you guys is invaluable, and we hope to keep growing with your help. Thank you so much.
There have always been people who don't believe. They don't believe in hard work. They don't believe in responsibility. Ultimately, they don't believe in themselves. They believe in shortcuts, in luck. They believe that outside circumstances control who succeeds and who doesn't. It's just the luck of the draw. But you are not one of these people. You believe that no matter what your circumstances tell you, success is still possible. And you accept this responsibility because you want to achieve something great. You're hungry for it. You chase it from the moment your eyes open in the early morning. You chase it into all hours of the night when others have given up, when others have said that it couldn't be done. You've kept pushing because you believe that success is not a game of chance. Success is a choice. A choice that you make every single day. That's what you believe.
Discover the world's most affordable and effective business school today at thrivetimeshow.com.